You may be wondering to yourself, who is this statue of? But soon you'll learn that this man, Pythagoras, has had a huge impact not only on mathematics, but also your everyday life. Now, why am I not showing you a real picture of this guy? Well, he was born in 582 before Christ, and obviously they didn't have cameras back then. We don't know much about Pythagoras and his life because no texts have ever been found. But what we can conclude is that Pythagoras was fascinated by the triangle. The Babylonians and Chinese had already made it known that the sides of a 3, 4, and 5 must be a right triangle, but Pythagoras wanted to dig deeper into the knowledge of the right triangle. Pythagoras found that the two shorter sides of a right triangle squared and added together equaled the longest side of the right triangle squared. Although this theorem may have been thought about earlier, Pythagoras was the first to prove this mathematical equation. Therefore, he received all of the credit, and we call this the Pythagorean Theorem. Now, how does Pythagoras and his theorem have an impact on you today? Well, let's take a look at this theorem a little more closely. The theorem states that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A and b are the arm and leg of the triangle, and c is the hypotenuse, or the longest side of the right triangle. Now, let's take a look at two examples of how we would use the Pythagorean theorem. So now that we've looked a little bit through Pythagoras and his theorem, let's take a little closer peek. So we have a right triangle. Here's our right triangle. And here's our A, our B, and our C. Our A and our B are the leg and arm of the triangle, and C is the hypotenuse. It's the longest side of the right triangle. So Pythagoras' theorem states that A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Okay, so you may be asking yourself, when am I ever going to use Pythagorean's theorem? Well, let's take a scenario, for example, a baseball diamond. So we know from each of the bases is 90 feet. So here we have 90 feet. From first to second, we also have 90 feet. Second to third, 90 feet. And third to home plate is 90 feet. So let's say that there's a runner coming for home plate, and the second baseman has the ball. So he needs to throw it from second base to home plate, and he wants to know, how far do I have to throw this ball? So what is this length? Well, if you look pretty closely, right here, we have a right triangle. There's our little right angle. So let's just draw this a little more standard so you guys can better see the picture. So here's our first base right over here. So we know that Pythagorean theorem, this is A, this is B, and this is C. And we also know from our drawing here that this is 90 feet, and this is 90 feet. And we don't know this length. This is what we're trying to find. So, Pythagorean's theorem, we have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So we're going to plug in our values for A and B. So we have 90 squared plus 90 squared equals C squared. So 90 squared is 8,100. So we're going to add 8,100 and 8,100 to get 16,200 equals C squared. So how do you get a square away? You're going to take the square root in order to get rid of this square. So we're going to take the square root of this and the square root of this. So this is just going to equal c now. And the square root of 16,200 is about 127. So our c right here and right here now becomes about approximately 127 feet. So the second baseman would have to throw to home plate on any baseball diamond 127 feet in order to get that runner out here at home plate. Okay, so let's take another example. Let's say we're going sailing and we want to know how long this rope is without having to climb up it, hold a measure, and go all the way down. It would be a disaster. So let's use this. Let's figure it out using Pythagorean Theorem. So they call this the mast, and we know that the mast is 7 feet. Okay? And we know that the boom, which is this little segment right here, is 4 feet. So how long is this rope? So here we can see that this is a right triangle. So let's draw a right triangle right over here, just so we don't have to ruin our little drawing. There's our right angle. Here we have our 4 feet and our 7 feet. And this is our question. Okay, so back to the Pythagorean Theorem. We know that we're trying to find C. And we know that this is A, this is B, and this is C. Now, Pythagorean Theorem states, again, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So, we're going to have A, 7 squared, plus B, which is 4 squared, equal our question, which is C squared. Now, 7 squared, 49, plus 4 squared, 16, equals C squared. 49 and 16, 65, and we're going to have that equal our C squared. Now again, like before, we're going to have to square root this to get C by itself. So let's do the square root and the square root to get rid of this. So now we just have our C. Square root of 65 is about roughly 8. Put that in roughly. So now we know that our question mark is going to be 8 feet. So no longer do you have to run up the mast, put something here and measure it. You can just simply do it with Pythagorean Theorem. That's just another way, another example of how Pythagorean Theorem can be useful. Many different ways. Any right triangle, you're going to be using the Pythagorean Theorem a lot. There's totally different ways you can use Pythagorean Theorem to find area, many different things. So it's something that you need to keep in mind. Just be sure you have this tucked back in your memory.